Good afternoon, and we certainly want to welcome all of our residents to our cabinet press briefing. We want to first start off by tendering apologies for the Premier, who is on Cayman and not able to be here with us this afternoon. We also want to apologize for not being able to be here last week, but I think all of you will know that we were involved in the Legislative Assembly, and that took priority, and we had to move the legislative agenda forward. We do have a number of items that we want to cover with you this afternoon, and then, of course, open it up to questions from yourselves in the press corps. I want to first start off by just giving a very brief update about my trip to Brazil. I, of course, as most of you will know, led a delegation that involved myself, the Chief Officer, Mr. Dax Basdeo, Chief Analyst from SEMA, and the CEO of Cayman Finance. We started off in Rio, where the Brazil Hedge Fund Forum was held. Government was one of the title sponsors, as well as Cayman Finance, and as well as two of our private sector companies here in Cayman. I can say that the conference went quite well. The Cayman Islands was well represented by private sector, and government was there also. We took the opportunity to deal with two other very important matters. We met with CVM, which is the Brazilian equivalent of the Securities Exchange Commission. In fact, it's known as the SEC of Brazil. We met with them because government for some time has been in discussions trying to establish a relationship between our stock exchange and the Brazilian stock exchange. One of the real peculiar aspects of Brazil, and this holds true for a number of Central and South American countries, and in particular some of our Asian countries, presence counts. And you actually need to engage in some things in terms of a face-to-face conversation. Writing letters, conference calls don't generally open the doors that you need to. And so after listening very carefully to the team, I decided that that had to be a part of our agenda in Brazil, because we had actually been talking about this and talking to them about this for going on 2 years now and hadn't really been able to progress this issue. Why is it that the CSX is looking for this relationship? Well, it's simple. Brazil is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and we already enjoy a good relationship with Brazil, dating back to 1974, when the first Brazilian bank was registered in Cayman, and in fact, we proudly boast now 30 Brazilian banks having registration in this country. We also boast of over $17 billion of funds raised through various means of Cayman Islands domiciled vehicles that have gone to directly fund infrastructure projects in Brazil. And so we see a next logical step in that relationship of having our stock exchanges having an MOU so that we can establish ways and means that Brazilian entities will be able to utilize our stock exchange. I'm sure many of you are aware from our press releases over the last few months that our stock exchange is actually going to morph itself and go from just a listing exchange to an actual trading exchange. We have a relationship with Deutsche Börse, which is one of the member exchanges of the World Federation of Exchanges, and is a highly reputable exchange globally. And so making that transition, we need to have more and more relationships, strategic relationships, that is going to assist in the growth of our CSX. And so that meeting went well. We met with the new commissioner. She's 6 months in post, and she, whilst had some questions, was very comforted in the fact that our second piece of business in Brazil, the signing of our tax information exchange agreement, was going to happen. She wasn't aware of that, and that made her a lot more comfortable with the prospect of the Bovespa, the stock exchange in Brazil, having a relationship with our exchange. CVM is the prime regulator for Bovespa, and that's one of the reasons we visited with CVM. We wanted to ensure that there were going to be no artificial barriers or matters that would have concerned CVM that may have prevented Bovespa from going into formal negotiations and to move the whole MOU forward. So that is something that the island needs to work on as a matter of priority, because it does hold real potential for business for Cayman, but also benefit the Brazilian economy. On the last day, I was in Brasilia, and I'm happy to report that we have now signed our tax information exchange agreement with Brazil. Brazil has exchange of information agreements with a large number of jurisdictions now, and so they, of course, were happy to have the agreement with Cayman, because as I mentioned earlier, there is significant business that already happens between the two countries, and so that signing took place, and we then, of course, are back here and happy to be on the ground. We left on Saturday and we came back on Wednesday. I would say that, given everything, it was a power pack trip. We went from one item to the next with no breaks in between. At this point, I turn it over to my colleague, the Minister of Tourism, for his update.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. Just want to briefly give an update on some of the projects that we're working on. Nothing really new, just continuing the work on the cruise facilities, the airport facilities, continued meetings with cruise lines. Actually, some of the lines were actually on island today for meetings. And so we're still moving forward with the process as has been agreed. That will be a transparent process, allowing us to be able to deliver a port in the short term. So another issue that's falls under my responsibility, a new area, is in regards to public transport. We've been getting quite a bit of representation about a new interpretation of the law in regards to tour bus drivers having to be Caymanian, and the government is looking at a solution to try to support and encourage the operators in ensuring that Caymanians are hired in this capacity, and we look forward to having an announcement with some changes to the law, which will create some incentives to encourage Caymanians to be hired in that area. I expect there to be a lot of questions, I guess, at the end. Again, thank you all for coming out today. We know it was short notice. The purpose for, I'm not sure if anybody ever explained it, but the reason for having the press conference today at 4 is because, as was mentioned earlier, the Premier was actually off island with the CPA delegates in Cayman Brac and wasn't getting back till 4 o'clock. And we thought about having the press conference tomorrow, but tomorrow we're back in the Legislative Assembly. And we wanted, since not having the press conference last week, we wanted to give the opportunity to the press for any questions that they may have had.
Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. Welcome the members of the press that are here as well, and also just to apologize for the change in schedule for this week. Hopefully next week we can revert to our regular Thursday morning briefings. Just a few items on my part today. Just some good news in terms of some of the legislation recently passed. Some of it would have been in the news already, but we have recently passed the human tissue transplant bill, which now opens Cayman up to being on the international donor list, and in the future transplants and so on being able to be carried out here. Obviously, we know many members of our population that in need of transplants, whether it's a kidney or the organ, and this legislation now gives us the opportunity to be placed higher on at least on the international list for persons waiting on organs. I can speak of individuals that we know that are in that position, and certainly so that we look forward with that with the passage of that law to helping persons in that situation. We also passed some amendments to the health practice law, primarily involving a bit of a realigning or more streamlining, I should say, the registration procedure for practitioners here in the island. Prior to this, practitioners would go through a registration process on an annual basis. We've now streamlined that to where they'll register once when they first start to practice here, register initially, and then they'll apply for a license every 2 years. So the process will not be as rigorous as it is every year as it is now. Practitioners have to register on an annual basis and go through a quite rigorous process. So we've streamlined it a bit. Now, those were the main changes in the health practice law. The Cayman National Cultural Foundation bill saw us doing a bit of a minor change to the law, just to bring it in line with a number of other entities, the cultural entities like the museum and the art gallery, the National Gallery. So those are minor amendments as well. The Marine Conservation Bill was also given a second reading, and that, as we all know, affords protection now to the stingrays. And also we made there's going to be a proposed committee stage amendment which will bring about a change in the way that the Marine Conservation Board operates. There's a anomaly now where the board, probably the only board of all the government boards, that is able to make directives and gazette those directives without first making them as recommendations to cabinet, having them approved by cabinet, and then published in gazette. So that will be regularized through a committee stage amendment. And then we're also very hopeful tomorrow as well, when we return to the Legislative Assembly, that we'll be able to we will have the second reading, and with anticipated support of the Legislative Assembly, the Mental Health Bill and the Mental Health Commission Bill. So again, very useful pieces of legislation, for persons who suffer from mental health illness here in the Cayman Islands, in terms of improving their human rights, or the situation as far as human rights, and then also improving their care. Obviously, the ultimate need for mental health here is an institution, a facility, but we look forward to being able to do that in the future. For now, the mental health bill is much awaited and much improved in terms of the law as regards to those suffering from mental health illness. So those pieces of legislation have been passed, and we look forward to being able to approve the others tomorrow. Put us in a good position as far as going forward in terms of our health care.
Thank you. Minister Seymour, you had a report to present.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Premier. Thank you all for coming again today, and do apologize also for the late start. The motion that I brought just last week, and the second reading of a bill, law to amend the Adoption Children's Law 2003 revision, and the primary aim of that, the Adoption Children's Bill 2012, was to ensure that the Cayman Islands has a comprehensive framework that modernizes its current position, both domestic and international, and inter-country adoptions. And so doing, the bill will bring the adoption law in line with aspects of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the United Kingdom's Children's Act 2003, the Hague Convention on the Protection of Children and Cooperation in respect of inter-country adoption, and the Children's Law 2012 revision. The successful passing of this bill this means the Cayman Islands has demonstrated its commitment, like many other countries around the world, to promoting best practice in adoption and ensuring the best possible outcomes for adopted children, their birth families, adoptive families, and everyone affected by the adoption. For many families, this was long awaited and most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Seymour, and certainly just jumping back to the LA for a minute, I'm also happy to report that we approved as a House an amendment to the Monetary Authority law last week as well. Very important piece of, minor amendment, but very important piece of legislation, because it now allows SEMA to move forward with its agreements with European-based regulators in and to ensure that the islands and our hedge fund products are compliant with the AIFMD, the Alternative Investment Fund Managers Directive. Simply put, it's a directive passed by the European Union whereby, unless there are specific arrangements in place, regulator to regulator, countries who fail to do this will not be able to have funds, hedge funds, domiciled in those countries, able to be marketed in Europe. We estimate that there's some 26.5% of all of our hedge fund business that are European driven. And obviously, you can only imagine the devastating effect that would have on our economy if we were not in a position to be able to meet the requirements of AIFMD. SEMA had already, of course, been in contact with ESMA, and now we'll go ahead with its dialogue to ensure we have in place the specific agreements with the various countries and ensure we're AIFMD compliant. And the last thing of real noteworthiness would have been the statement that I made in the LA announcing that Cayman had made the decision to go with its FATCA, Intergovernmental Agency, Model 1 IGA, as they're called, approach. This is after deep consultation with our financial services industry. I'm sure you all will have read in the press the excitement that's out there in the industry, because everyone basically had their breaths half held for these two items, because these were two very important items that needed to be put to bed for the jurisdiction to ensure that there was that stability out there. I can say that when the Cayman Islands delegation did its presentation at the conference in Brazil, one of the participants there had not heard did we had passed this amendment. The only question that came from the floor was what were we going to do about AIFMD, and so we were very happy to be able to answer that one quite positively, and ensure that we continue to spread the word that everyone knows we've amended the law and we're able, that paves the way for us to be able to be compliant with this directive. No other comments. We would obviously open it up for questions. Any questions you may have at this time?
Good afternoon, Wendy from Cayman News Service, and with incredible predictability, straight to the West Bay Road. Obviously, there was some surprise to a lot of people on Monday morning about what parts of the road actually ended up being closed. And I think some of the concerns that people raised were that there just wasn't a full explanation. DART didn't actually put out anything until 7 o'clock that morning, by which time people had already left home. And there are concerns that the NRA is saying nothing and government is saying nothing, and the instructions are all coming from DART. So can you explain to us what's happening about the road, which bits will be reopened and accessible again, and when? And where are you with the negotiations as far as the agreement itself is concerned, and when will we see the PricewaterhouseCoopers review? That'll do.
Okay. Well, Wendy, hopefully you've gotten note, because those were about, I think, 10 questions in one. But and obviously we'll go through those bit by bit, and my colleagues will obviously also add a lot of structure to what we say. Obviously, as government, any delays and any inconvenience that cause the public, we are quite open and frank to apologize. I mean, so we apologize to the public for any inconvenience that's being caused at present. I know that there are traffic issues as it relates to my home district, and I experienced those for the first time today as well. However, this is a short-term occurrence, and we're confident that once all of the tie-ins are completed, that all traffic will return to normalcy I think it's what I would like to call, I would like to say, short-term pain for very short-term pain for very long-term gain in terms of what opening this road corridor is going to mean for our district. I think history is going to look back and see this as a key milestone that really opens up a new wave of economic activity on the peninsula and into West Bay, which I think is going to be positive for all of our districts, because we don't have any local government. Everything goes into the national treasury, and so I think it's going to have a real positive impact on our economy. In terms of the specifics, I don't know.
I can take some of it, and I'm sure my colleague, Mr. Scotland or Mr. Seymour, will take. In terms of the surprise when I mean, obviously, I think my colleague just apologized for the lack of notice. In terms of information coming from DART and not from the NRA, I've heard some people calling for government. I think the information that we gave is, as far as government is concerned, from a policy position, we did the gazetting and we notified the public, the press, as to when the road was de-gazetted. When the road closings and when the scheduling would have taken place was something that would have been coordinated between the NRA and would be coming from DART, because DART is actually who was building the road under the supervision of the NRA. So the fact that the notices are coming from DART should not be strange, because they are actually building the road, and I think it was a known fact that they were building the Esther-Tibbetts Highway and doing the connections to the West Bay Road. However, like I said, for the notice not being there, I mean, we can apologize for that. In terms of the road being closed, I know I had some communication with you in the morning that it occurred. There was a bit of confusion. When we say that the road is closed, for example, the road closed, there was some question about the road being closed from Governor's Square down to Coots. Right? The road isn't closed. People are using it. The problem is that there's no through road there anymore, because there's a tie-in in Governor's Way. So you can drive down the road if you're going to Trafalgar Place or if you're going to the condominiums, but you're not able to continue through that road, and because the connection doesn't allow you onto the Esther-Tibbetts Highway, because they're working on that connection now, that road is not temporarily being used as a through fare or a through way, and so you're being redirected. But to say that road is closed would be I guess, an overstatement. Basically, it's a temporary closure while the work is going on. I don't think there's any question that the piece of road that was gazetted was the piece from Public Beach, from the old Governor's Way to Raleigh's Quay, and that's the piece that has been closed, and work is continuing there. The other section of the road north of Raleigh Quay going down towards West Bay is still open and being used. There is some work right in the sweet connection of Raleigh Quay onto the Esther-Tibbetts Highway. I've seen it there this morning, and it's right where the road narrows down to one lane in each direction, because there's some utility works that have been ongoing there. And obviously, the area where the road ties in to right in the vicinity of what we refer to as Holman's Corner, which is tying into the West Bay Road, is still a temporary surface and is causing significant delays. And we've been in contact with NRA and DRCL to see how quickly they're going to be able to get that road finalized. I'm not sure which other areas of your question wasn't answered, Wendy, but maybe Minister Scotland might have something else.
Sorry, where are we with the negotiations as they go on, which was basically the situation with the beaches and the Esther-Tibbetts widening at the other end, as well as the PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Well,
can I just clarify though, so I don't forget, when you're talking about the stretch back from Yacht Drive to Raleigh Quay, which, although it's not gazetted closed, it is essentially closed for driving on. I mean, I don't think people probably realise that you can actually go around and go down onto it. I think maybe some reassurances about Easter would be good, because obviously that's the area where people go camping, and they need to understand that are they going to be allowed to go down there and camp as they have done?
Sure, and just to say, I mean, we've seen many people. So if you're coming north on the Esther Tibbetts Highway and you turn by Raleigh Key, which is a road going down by where the hotel is, in front of Tiki Beach, you can turn on that road, and you can drive down and you can get access that way. And if you're coming south from West Bay, just after you get on to by the new junction, there's a right-hand turn that can be made that allows people to go there. The problem is you get back up to Raleigh Key, and when you get there, you then have to go back and go around the roundabout because you can't go across 5 lanes of traffic, all right? But that road is open. People are using it. I mean, we've gone there to look, and people are using the road, specifically when they're coming north, going towards West Bay, because it's then just a simple left turn onto that road, and you come down and you get through. So that road is open. We haven't degazetted it. As we promised, we wouldn't degazette that portion of the road until after the PricewaterhouseCoopers report was made public. So that piece hasn't been closed, and the only piece that has been closed, contrary to some reports, is the same piece that we have said that was degazetted and that we've committed to closing as a part of the preparations of an enhancement for the public beach facility, and the events, the tournaments and stuff that were going on this weekend. Mrs. Scotland, you want to take the other piece?
I'm not sure if you got the answer about the access for Easter, but there's nothing that is going to prevent any access for, you know, if you're referring to people that would camp on the beach and so on. Yeah.
Obviously, the way that the traffic flow is going.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, the way the traffic flow is going, drivers are being directed essentially straight onto the ETH, and you have to kind of do
from
like
which direction you're referring to?
If you're coming from West Bay, so if you're going
Right.
south, so you're being directed on the ETH where you would normally go straight on to go past.
But
go down to the
the
beach.
ability
So-
is there to make that right turn and go down
Yes,
the existing West
you
Bay
can.
Road, right?
But obviously, it's not encouraged. There's diggers
And-
parked there. There's people sort of asking you, "What are you doing?"
But-
I
but is
think
there- and
people
going-
are not sure that they are able to do that, and that's what I wanted to get some clarification that if people will be able to insist that they can drive down that road.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can access it going to West Bay by making a left turn, by making a left in the current state where the temporary closure at the Governor's Way point, at the Governor's Way location. If you're going northbound, you can go northbound on Esther Tibbetts and make a left at what is Raleigh Key, and still access the beach in that way as well. So the access to the beach is still going to be there. So campers can, you know, as far as what they do at Easter, still be able to access that. As far as remind me the negotiations. So as late as this afternoon, we had a discussion with the RCL together with PwC, looking at the independent review, and we're trying to conclude that. Of course, as we know, as we told you before, we either had a question of whether we release the independent review as it is currently, or we wait until it's completed based on the Third Amendment. The Third Amendment has been concluded as far as all the negotiation parts, and it was with the various agencies, legal department, the NRA planning department, and all those comments have been turned back now to us to be able to put it back. And now the RCL are finalizing the Third Amendment with the input that came back from the various departments, and we're hoping then to be able to execute that Third Amendment as early next week, which will then help us to conclude the independent review, because obviously, as we've said before, that independent review has the Third Amendment has information in it which will influence the final version of the independent review.
Did you get the widening of the Esther Highway?
Yes, the widening of Esther Tibbetts Highway all the way from Butterfield Roundabout through Cayman Bay itself is included in the Third Amendment as well. And as we've said before, we think that's a huge benefit for the country to be able to achieve that at this time. What's considered to be a piece of road where, you know, there've been several road deaths since it's been open, and the plan was always, because I said from my involvement from time I was at Public Works, the plan was always to have that road widened to 4 lanes from, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years after it was built. That was never done, and now we're able to achieve that through the NRA agreement. I think it's a significant achievement for the country to be able to get it at this time when we're not able to go and borrow capital funds, based on the financial position and the FFR and so on.
Jamie Tawil with Radio Cayman. Question for Mr. Glidden. Mr. Glidden, in speaking with the Cayman Islands Tourism Association this past week, I saw an email to membership, essentially. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not. It was basically a survey asking members to explain some of the recent difficulties, quote unquote, that they're having in dealing with immigration. And while I don't have any specific examples, unfortunately, it just seemed as though an association with more than 250 members felt it necessary to come up with a survey asking its members about difficulties they're having renewing work permits, visas, that sort of thing. I was just wondering if you have a general reaction to that, or if you're familiar with it in general.
No, I'm not. I mean, it hasn't come to me as yet, but I expect it will. If there's a concern in the industry from a work permit standpoint, it hasn't. I assume the hotel or the tourism association was looking at trying to see if it's isolated incidents or whether its members are having a genuine problem. But that result or that report hasn't been made to me yet. But if it does, obviously we recognize that it's important for us to make the guest experience as smooth as possible. Having said that, there's also a responsibility to ensure that Caymanians have every opportunity to participate and make a living or be provided with opportunities from the tourism industry. So if there is a question as to whether that balance is being adequately maintained, then of course we'll look into it to see exactly what is causing those challenges. But it's important that in a time of unemployment from a Caymanian perspective, that we ensure that every opportunity is afforded to Caymanians in any of the work where work permits are going to be applied for. But obviously that balance has to be struck. But I haven't received any reports or concerns as yet.
And just one other question, fairly simple one for Mr. Scotland. Just any comments with regards to the two sporting contingents heading out to the Carifta Games, obviously happening at the end of the month. You've got swimming headed to Jamaica and athletics off to the Bahamas. So just if you have any general comments in that regard.
No, yes, of course. I spoke to the swimming contingent at a previous briefing, and I actually went to a press briefing when the swimming team was announced. I congratulate them on the way they announced the team. The swimming association had a press briefing, presented each of the swimmers with a certificate acknowledging their selection to the swim team, which obviously is a huge accomplishment just in and of itself to be selected for the Cayman Islands swim team. Obviously, you're off to Jamaica now and for Carifta. I think it's next weekend, Easter weekend. I want to wish them all the best. I think they've done a tremendous job so far. I think the swim team is around 16 or 18 members, so that in itself is again a big accomplishment to have from such a small country. 16 or 18 swimmers going to represent us. I'm quite confident they're going to do personal best and bring back some medals as well. I want to wish them all the best. Godspeed with the swim team. Likewise with the athletics team. The athletics team was announced yesterday or the day before, I don't remember. But likewise, a very big contingent going to Carifta in Bahamas next weekend as well. Very, very strong team. I understand that young Jarrell Belafonte, middle distance runner, broke national records in our 800 and 1500 meters very recently. So that puts him in a good position heading off to Carifta. And so again, want to wish them all the best. Again, looking forward to excellent results, very good results coming back from a Carifta team. Want to say again how useful the inter-secondary meet was for the preparation of this Carifta team, just showing that using it as a very good development meet, and wanting to, again, along with the assistance of the Minister of Education and of course the CIA, to continue to have that meet, because it put us in a good position, help to strengthen our athletics team, and just wonderful to see the growth of our young athletes in our sports. These are two of our focus sports, and they're doing extremely well. To send off, I think this would be one of the largest contingents in years for both teams. So again, the Cayman Islands is proud of both those teams heading off to Crifta next weekend. Looking forward to good results. Of course, this weekend we have another sport. Some sports tourism happening here in Cayman with the Norseca volleyball, which it's become almost a permanent fixture in Cayman now because of the excellent organization by Mr. Noel Williams and his group from the Cayman Islands Volleyball Federation. We're looking forward to right at the public beach there, and obviously with the works that are being carried out, under the NRA agreement, enhancing that beach. Maybe not to see the full enhancements for this year for Norseca, but certainly looking forward to future events being held there with the enhanced facilities and being able to host even bigger events at that facility in the very near future.
Hey, Stuart Wilson, Caymanian Compass. I just have a few couple of simple questions. First one is, what is the last act that you guys are going to do as the government, you think?
That's a very good question, Stuart. And I wish I could give you an answer.
It's something new every day.
You would infer that what we're doing now are all acts.
Well, I think only you guys can answer this one, right?
No, and that's a very fair question. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be in a position to give that a direct answer at this stage. What I can say is that we will continue to ensure that we carry out our constitutional responsibilities right up through the general election to ensure that a government is in place and that we continue to have proper administration of the country. That is something that goes without saying, and we have to do. What that last act will be, I'm not quite sure. What I can say is that it's obvious that these last 3 months that we are making progress. I think that there's been good progress on the cruise tourism front. Facilities-wise, I think you've seen the progress that the Minister of Health continues to make, not only passing legislation, but also rolling out the strategic plan for health. We also launched publicly in the Legislative Assembly our new national energy policy, which is a key milestone about how we strategically plan for the provision of energy in this country and trying to go green and lessen our reliance on fossil fuels. You will see that Minister Seymour continues to press ahead under his constitutional responsibilities and in particular trying to ensure that we bring some semblance of sanity and rationalization to the Juvenile Remand Center, which is a huge project, and certainly I can say that he will continue to work diligently on that point. So what the last act will be, I'm not sure. What I can say is that over the next few months, as we do like others, we campaign, we are going to have real action taking place.
I think, so just so I'm clear on what we're saying, I assume that this isn't to do with an assumption that when the House dissolves next week,
Right.
it would be our last act as a government, right?
Well, yeah, this is what I'm saying. Only you guys could answer the question, meaning, yeah.
So we wanted to clarify that point. The House dissolving
Absolutely.
next week doesn't mean that we're without a government during that period of time.
Right.
We continue to be ministers of cabinet, right? So the
Until-
government continues to run until after the election, right?
Until a new cabinet is
So,
appointed.
so there's a handover at that point. So it's not like our last act is going to be next Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever the day that is.
But certainly for the Legislative Assembly, obviously tomorrow will be the last day we anticipate being there. We can legally be there up until the 26th, but certainly there'll be some bills that, as Minister Scotland has pointed out, there's a few to go. So we will complete that work. And just so we're very clear about how our system works and how our Constitution works, our Constitution gives 7 days after a general election for the governor to swear in a new cabinet. And so they become the government elect. And so naturally from the 22nd onward, nothing major would happen in the country. If something completely unforeseen was to happen in Cayman, the tradition and practice in all modern democracies would be that the incoming government would be who would be consulted and ensure that their decision would be the decision made. So let's just say that some catastrophe were to happen between the 22nd and the 29th of May. whilst we are still, the five of us would still be the ministers, because you're not ministers until a new cabinet is sworn in. Ultimately, it would be for that bridge period, it would be the new, whoever has been pronounced to form the new government would be the ones that would make the decision.
Thank you. Just another question as it relates to paraquat. Is that something that, I know that was on the radar as of late, and was it something that you guys are going to ban at some point? Or, I mean, will it happen before the House dissolves? I mean, before the next administration comes in?
Well, the Premier is not here, and obviously this is a matter that falls principally to the minister responsible for agriculture. And so we will certainly pass on the question to her. I know that over the years in many countries, the use has been one that has been of concern. And you're right in saying, as far as I'm aware, at least there are a number of jurisdictions who have either put very strict limitations or outright bans around that and other forms of agriculture or chemicals that are principally used in that sphere. But we'll have to get that one and get back to you to a specific answer.
I think what some of the confusion may have been, Stuart, was the Youth Parliament last year did their presentation in paraquat. Did a motion in paraquat, and some people thought it was actually No. This was actually.
But there is a real there's a lobby.
This is a live issue that I'm discussing.
There's a group advocating the ban.
Indeed.
To that, that's some of the reasons why we're trying to ensure that the farmers got their IDs and so forth, because it would only be the farmers that would be able to purchase the paraquat. And there's apparently there's a necessity for farmers to have access to paraquat. But I'm sure they're trying to condense that to just a few people. But as Deputy Premier said, we'll follow up on that with Premier.
One last question. I wonder if as you guys are leaving, I wouldn't say leaving, maybe you'll be coming back. Who knows? Who knows? But the thing is this, I know that there's a lot of support for what we call elite athletes out there. And we have very many other elite citizens in other areas. Are these, will we ever take care of these people who have abilities in arts and, maybe gifted, not in athletics or academics, but may need an opportunity otherwise? Is that something that we're looking at?
Definitely.
Let's do it. I mean, if you want to use the Elite Athlete Program as an example, the Elite Athlete Program has been around now for several years. Over the past, it was a simple program which said if you were a full-time athlete, a world-class athlete, because elite in terms of the way it's been defined for the elite athletes talks about athletes who perform at the world-class level. So they would be going to Olympics, World Championships, and so on, and then they would also be seen as ambassadors for the Cayman Islands as well. So it's a two-pronged.
All I'm saying is, like, for instance, like you have guys.
So in terms of other areas, culture and arts and so on, there have been persons like that. I know at one point, Bendel Hydes was a cultural ambassador based on his art and so on, and we've also had others that have, at least in my tenure, our tenure, in terms of arts, have approached government and received one-off grants and so on. One of the problems with it, Stuart, is about we need to establish a structured program to do that. I know that also through the Minister of Education, persons would receive scholarships for the arts, and even with the Nation Building Fund, we've also recognized persons in that way as well. I know, for instance, we have some programs, some of the after-school programs that are running, like the one with with Chris Christian, the Cayman Arts program that he has. That's been receiving some government support, and that's helping to promote the culture and heritage.
I'm very happy to hear that, because as an artist myself, I know that there have been very, opportunities have been sparse in that respect.
I can say as far as this government goes, we recognize that, and probably the factor that's probably inhibiting it most in this time are the austere times that we're in.
Absolutely.
I know numerous artists that have applied for funding through my ministry. For example, some have received some small one-off grants and so on, and we continue to try to do that.
I mean, obviously there are more major issues that the country is dealing with, and I know that, but I mean, I think that this is something that has its place as well, and so I just thought I'd bring it up.
Well,
Thank
just-
you so much.
But let me just add one thing to it, and I think perhaps Minister Scotland is being a little modest. I mean, the National Gallery is something that government funds. The NCFS is another organization that government funds. But let me just finish this point. I think government sort of has taken a view in the past to try to facilitate through those ways some broad opportunities. Now, when you drill down to the level you're talking about, individual, naturally that becomes the more challenging aspect. Let me give a classic example. When we set a scholarship requirement, you either have the grades or not. Very objective, very easy to assess. However, I think all of us can see some artwork just over your shoulder. There's some of us in this room that will think that that artwork is beautiful, and then there's some that aren't going to think it's that great. There's some that think that one particular person may have a great voice, and for some of our tastes, it might not be so great. And so you are talking about, and I think we got to agree on that point, because we're talking about taxpayers' money, first of all, that it is a very gray area. Let me finish.
The fact that you mentioned taxpayers' money is something that I really want to harp on, because I really must say that the 4 years, we've looked around, some money has been spent that hasn't been represented well.
Sure.
And to be absolutely honest, I think that needs to be addressed in this type of forum.
Sure. And Stuart, I think, and that's exactly it, and this drives to that point, right? There are people out there who will look on and say, that's not money that's being, to go down that road. There are people that criticize the Elite Athletes program.
I mean, we have people flying around spending thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and promote routes that no longer exist. And
Sure.
then when real, people who might have something to offer come along, it's a song and dance.
Sure.
No pun intended.
No pun intended on the song and dance.
And
But
Stuart,
let me just finish one point,
Yeah.
Mr. Seymour. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it is an area that has been an area that I think all of us in the community can agree for a number of years we have struggled about how we would try to go about it. We do give us, I think it's a small grant to the Music Association. I don't think that's anything that any of us would say is quote unquote funding the arts, to your point. What I think that ultimately we're going to naturally get to at some point is when we're able to perhaps have something that is more of an association versus specifics. My point is, when it comes down to this aspect, once you give one person, the question is always going to be, but I like this other one better, and I think this other one is better. Why not that person? And I think that's where you would have a real challenge. I mean, Minister Scotland, for example, you either make the time or you don't for elite athletes. You either make that qualification time in a particular sport or you don't. So for government, it's much easier to measure. That's the only point I'm making, Stuart. It's the measurability, not the tangibility. I think all of us will agree that the arts and artists generally in Cayman are very worthy people who we as government, and any government, I believe, ought to always try to ensure that we assist in ways that we can. I think perhaps one of the things that we do need to do is perhaps try in some way to get artisans and artisanship, if that's a word, a little more tightly aligned, and perhaps government is able to fund an organization. And so then, because when government starts to pick, I think the issues that you get into, because I get that question all the time. I've heard people have come to me and asked me, I'll be frank with you, why has person X been assisted when I think person Y is also worthy? Because the tastes. And I think, but it's a very good question, and it's one that we do need to continue to work toward, and we can't shun away from.
Yeah, definitely, Stuart. I think Deputy Premier hit the nail on the head. It's all about organizing structure. And for instance, I mean, I know a bit about some of those organizations in terms of music and programs out there that I think that we should be going after, that we're not going after. Areas that I think that we should be sending our artists, depending on the genre of music. There's forums that happen in Tampa every year that all of the known artists and labels, record labels, they interview artists and they pick from those artists every year. And there's different forums that happen throughout the U.S. and Europe that I think that we could take advantage of. And if someone had a program saying, we're going to spend X on this program, this is how we're going to try to get our artists recognized, rather than one person just going solamente and saying, well, I'm taking it this way because, and I think that has been the problem, where artists are actually requested assistance on their own without a proper structure, and persons then wondering, well, is the money just going to a black hole? Yes, we know this artist is a good artist, and then that is some of the concerns, and then you would need someone who has a true appreciation for music.
Just let me say, you have some people here spending $60,000 of their own money to promote the Cayman Islands all over the world. And you can't look at that and group that with other
what I'm
things.
saying is not one person that makes a decision as to where money goes. It takes all the ministers, and every minister has a different leaning, if I may say, and it's going to take persons, elected persons, with true appreciation for different principles to actually move it forward. I mean, that's just the reality of things. Different people are going to have different visions about where they think certain things should go, and I think Deputy Premier said it best. Yeah.
Gentlemen, sorry, I have one question for all of you and one question for Mr. Scotland. The question for all of you is, are you ready yet to tell us something more about your plans for the election? I know that tomorrow we'll be announcing one candidate that will be running alongside you. So I was wondering if you're willing to start saying, are you all running together as a group? Sure. Are you calling yourselves anything? Are you guys going to be having running mates in West Bay? Obviously, we know that one person is joining Mr. Scotland and Mr. Seymour in Bodentown. But are you running candidates in Cayman Brac? I mean, obviously, one candidate in Cayman Brac, but you're running them in East End, North Side, Bodentown. What's happening? Can you tell us? That's that question for all of you. And I have a question for Mr. Scotland about the human tissue transplant. This is it's been raised by Azad Miller. I'm sure you know he's got some objections, and which he said he did not have time to. He wasn't able to voice his objections in the LA, I understand, because you all swapped everything around and then carried on doing business until midnight or something. I don't know. Anyway, the question, which is a valid one, which is, who are these people in the law that are going to be prescribed that are other than registered medical practitioners that could remove people's organs and or authorise tissue removal? And also, why have you opted not to prohibit the sale of organs?
When the specific provision that Mr. Miller refers to, and I just say that the House was meeting on Friday. I think all members of the House knew that we were going to meet late, and some members chose not to stay behind for the business of the House to be carried on. But we nevertheless we were hoping, actually, as everyone was aware, to finish the business of the House last Friday, and of course we're going back tomorrow because of the legislation that we have to be completed. As far as the provision about other persons prescribing other persons, I'm not quite.
That's exactly what it says in the law. I've checked.
I know what he's.
Who are those persons?
I know what he's saying. It says I'm not familiar enough to say specifically on that provision. Maybe do you have the draft law there? I could look at it. And then the second part about the sale of human organs, I think obviously what is prohibited in most countries is persons harvesting their organ for them to sell it to someone. Obviously, there is a trade. There is a trade that goes on in organs, as far as I'm aware, where the persons because when we talk about sale and so on of organs, obviously people that harvest them are paid. The people that do the organ transplant themselves are receive remuneration for doing that. Those are the doctors and so on. So when we talk about sale of organs, I don't think we're talking specifically about, you know, someone harvesting their organ and saying I'm doing it for monetary gain. It's about being able to put in place a procedure and regulate the transfer, if you will, of money between the persons who actually do the procedures, either the harvesting and or the transport and the transplanting then.
One question: the driveway between Cayman Bay, when the road opens to 4 lanes, in between Cayman Bay where it's at now, where there's the median and then there's the 2 sides, will that move and then we'll all have 4 lanes going straight through Cayman Bay there as well?
Yep.
That's the plan. When eventually we'll have the first section will be widened. The 4 lanes will be the section from Butterfield roundabout to the roundabout just south of Cayman Bay, and then eventually the section through Cayman Bay itself will also be widened to 4 lanes. That's all included in the Third Amendment.
So can you go back to the bit about, because you didn't explain about who these people are that will be able to say that you can use organs that are not doctors?
That's what I'm saying, Wayne. I'm not quite clear on that exact provision myself. I can clarify it for you. I can undertake to get a clarification
Okay.
for you. I mean, I did have a discussion with Mr. Miller on it before we tabled it on Friday, and I was gonna get it clarified as well.
The road does look nice.
So that just leaves the other question that you're all trying to dodge.
Which is,
Come on.
We're not trying to dodge anything, Ms. Ledger. Ms. Ledger, we announced a couple of weeks ago that we had every intention of running together, and certainly I don't think it's been in a secret. And we've said, I thought we'd also said that we'd be running as a team. At this stage, you've quite rightly said another candidate is going to be announced shortly, and certainly we anticipate in the next week that we will also be making some public announcements about what we'll be calling ourselves, etc.
You know that already?
As I said, we'll be announcing publicly things like what we'll be calling ourselves. Cayman has a very interesting Marl Road. And I'm sure there's many of you who may have heard things already. But I must say there's a few variations floating around.
People, names, candidates.
When that
Even if you can't say candidates, are you planning, say for example, are you planning on finding 2 other people in my space to run with you? Oh, sorry, Evan. Are you planning on having 2 candidates join you on the platform in West Bay, for example? And I know you've already got a 3rd. Will you be looking for a 4th for Boddentown? And will you be running people in Georgetown?
Wendy, I think it's fair to say that given everything that happened in December, and certainly what continues to happen up until today in our little country, if we between now and I would say the next couple of weeks have like-minded individuals, persons that we believe we can have a productive working relationship with, then we certainly are going to do that. What I can say is that certainly we believe very firmly that we have a lot to offer the country, and we believe that we will be an important part of this upcoming general election. We are simply not going to run with people, let's say in West Bay, for running with people's sake. We made that decision from December that we weren't going to do that. And so we are sticking to that decision that we made internally. However, if between now and then there are people that we believe we can work with from a policy standpoint and have a sustainable relationship, one that is based on mutual respect, one that is based on being able to have mature discussions and disagree at times, but still be able to have that strong foundation, and we'll do it. But until that happens, we're certainly not just going to say, oh, let's get to a number for a number's sake. I hope that answers the question.
Not really. Obviously, it's nomination day on Wednesday. So when you say, well, if it happens between now and the election, it can't, can it? If you're running on a concrete platform,
No.
you'll be announcing that on Wednesday.
No, you don't have to.
All that happens on Wednesday when there is that each individual candidate gets nominated by two persons that live in the same district as they do, that are on the registered voters list as well. That doesn't no candidates those that are declared together can do that together on Wednesday as well. But all is going to happen, because I can say that the PPM may have a number of candidates declared. They're all going to go to their individual districts, each one of them individually, and be nominated. Likewise for any candidate from any platform as well. So exactly as my colleague has said, that can take place right up until the election. Now we won't be waiting.
In other words, what you're
we won't
talking
be waiting
about-
that long to be making an announcement. But obviously it doesn't have to happen by next Wednesday. We will be making some announcements in the very near future as to what we'll be doing. As you know, we have the four of us here. The premier makes five, and you mentioned one that will be announcing tomorrow. That's six firm candidates for the group that we have here, and some future announcements will be made to which will help people to understand better what we're doing.
Okay, because that's what I'm saying is that unless these people that you're talking about have declared themselves by nomination day, then you can't run with them. And alternatively, there is the issue of the elections law, which allows you, we start the counting the money that you spend on your election campaigns from nomination day.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you're allowed to spend slightly more if you are independent candidates, and less, I understand, if you're a party on it. So that, obviously, how you're defining yourselves is quite important in terms of the election law. And
Well,
obviously, if you want candidates, they have to declare to
Sure.
be with you.
You're quite right. I mean, obviously, come Wednesday, anyone that isn't nominated and declared and pay their $1,000 can't get on the list of candidates in a particular district. But that doesn't stop you on April 10th, 15th, 4th. If you have a number of like-minded individuals who decide at that particular point in time that whilst they may not have been formed together at that point, that they want to become a part of something common from that happening.
Or they may wait until May the 23rd to decide that as well, after the results are in.
I believe we're in store for a very interesting election campaign and results.
All elections are interesting.
Agreed. Any further questions? Well, really just want to thank you all for coming, and certainly want to assure all of you that we will continue to have our open and transparent government. Really want to ask God's richest blessings on our islands, for all of our citizens, our school children, those in uniform branches of government, our civil servants, and so until we have our next briefing, we certainly wish everyone Godspeed.